because that's an important trait we all must have.
Right.
We all must realize, no matter what organization you might be a part of, no matter if it's an hourly job or if it's a salary job, we must have ethics and integrity when we do our job.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
There will still be the journey.
The journey.
New sheriff in town, and his name is
The journey.
Journey.
This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. This is the journey.
The journey.
What is it that moved you?
The journey. The journey. The journey. The journey.
The Journey Initiative is generously supported by Nike's Black Community Commitment.
Welcome back to another episode of The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson, and today we have another Memphis icon. This is a kind of Memphis, but it's got a slash. I don't know if it's a forward slash or backward slash, but we got Seattle in there too. But nevertheless, before we get to our guest, we got a quote for you. And this quote comes from the former First Lady, the first Black First Lady in U.S. history. And it goes a little something like this. History has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own. What does that mean to you? Well, it means to me that, being courageous and having courage will break down barriers and will change some things for you. And once that gets in you, that hope and that belief that you can do anything will start to take on a life of its own. But today we have Seattle-born, Memphis-bred father. He's a PK that became a preacher. Telling you, attorney, husband, father. Listen, without any further ado, we have brother Damon Griffin. What's up, man?
What's up, brother?
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good. Listen,
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Man, listen, I want to get all the baddest brothers in the city to come across this stage and talk to us and talk to these young people about what it takes, because a lot of times they're seeing the finished product. They're not seeing the trials and tribulation. We wear the nice suits and stuff, so you don't see the skint up knees and elbows and all of that kind of stuff. But listen, I want to go back to the beginning. I want to go back to Seattle. Tell me about the household in Seattle that you were brought up in.
I appreciate you having me again. To be a part of the club that you're talking about, that's a lot of pressure, Larry. That's a lot of pressure. Seattle, I love Seattle. It's the city I was born in, and in my household in Seattle, I was raised in a household of a father and a mother, and siblings as well. We were
How
back
many
in
brothers and sisters?
I had a sister and I had a brother, and in the '80s that was a big family, and my parents were very instrumental in everything we did growing up.
Okay, and you made the move to Memphis. Now, you made the move to Memphis. What is the first thing you remember about getting to Memphis?
Yeah, so we made the move to Memphis, and my dad was one of the first Black pioneers of FedEx. He was a pilot at FedEx.
Okay. And
one of the biggest differences in Seattle and Memphis, as soon as we stepped foot out of the airport in Memphis, it was hot. It was humid, and it was just a different country almost.
Oh yeah.
From what I was used to, from what we were used to, it was like a different country. People were different.
Do you remember a lot of those early conversations with you and your brother, and some of the things that y'all had to deal with being young boys coming to Memphis?
Absolutely, like it was yesterday almost.
Really, what kind of questions, what kind of conversations did you guys have?
A lot of the conversations we had during that time, and this was like the mid '80s.
Right.
We had never been to the South before, and when we came to Memphis, we were in an environment where I was looked at differently.
Right.
And I wasn't used to that.
Right.
In the Northwest, you didn't experience that. But in Memphis, I realized that my skin tone may have been different. And it was almost like, it was almost as if I recognized that my skin tone was different when I came to Memphis, honestly.
Did you ever get any of that? You talk different, you talk white.
How did you know? Absolutely we did. Absolutely we did. And it's funny, for for many years beyond that, honestly.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Wow. So Damon, tell me, who outside of your parents had the most influence or impact on young Damon?
So as you mentioned, my dad was my number one mentor in my life.
Okay.
And outside of them, we had a lot of extended family from Seattle, and family that adopted us in once we came to Memphis. That's the thing about Memphis. It's like there's so many people that adopt you into their family, and that's what happened when we came to Memphis. And there were many individuals who brought us in and had an impact on our lives. But I'll tell you someone who helped me, and she probably doesn't even remember it, was Miss Ruby Wharton here in Memphis.
Really?
She didn't know me from anybody, and when I got out of law school, and I didn't know any lawyers in Memphis, and she brought, and I was going around, just threw on a suit and walked around downtown Memphis in the hot summer heat, right? Sweating with a handkerchief. Well, I went into their law office, and I was looking for a job. I didn't have a job, and she heard me out in the lobby talking to their receptionist and brought me in, introduced herself, and I introduced myself. She began to give me names of people and contacts and that kind of thing, and she had a huge impact on me as a young lawyer trying to be a lawyer, right?
What decisions did you make in hindsight as a young person that ended up having, kind of a lifelong impact on you?
At a very young age, and I do mean young, and I know this doesn't happen to everyone, including my own sons, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer.
Really?
And I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, and so everything that I did growing up, pretty much, I did it with that in the back of my mind.
How did you get introduced to law at such a young age?
It's funny, when I was young, my grandfather, I don't even remember this. My dad told me this. My grandfather said he's going to be a lawyer. Wow. And I didn't know anything about that. But I took a huge effort to want to speak on behalf of other folks who may not have a voice or who may not be able to speak on their own behalf for whatever reason. I felt the need to be able to represent and speak for them. Wow. And that's kind of what that was a passion of mine, and it continued to live with me.
When did you know you was going to be okay?
I think I knew I was going to be okay when I was at a young age and in school and dealing with adversity in school. I still was able to, even with the difficult times in school, and the setbacks, I knew I was going to be okay because I got back up. And because I got back up, it made me stronger for the next time there may have been a setback, or the next time there was a situation that caused me to get kicked down, right? Right. I was able to stand up, and I went through some difficult times. It wasn't, you called it earlier, it wasn't just putting on a suit and here we are. Right. There were some difficult times where I had to dust myself off and get back up, and it's hard. Each time we get back up, it's hard.
Right. Well, this is the last question of this segment, and I gotta ask you, when was the first time that you can remember that you realized you was a black man? Hold on. Listen, we're gonna come right back on the journey with brother Damon Griffin, and he's gonna tell us when he realized he was a brother. Stay right there. We'll be right back on the journey on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
This is a journey.
Let me take you on a journey.
Success in life is not a straight line. There are twists and turns in everyone's life, and the more you know about their story, the more you'll understand the process. KUDZUKIAN Media Group proudly presents The Journey, a show that features successful black men in Memphis telling their stories of their lives and the ups and downs they've encountered on their ultimate road to success. We believe The Journey will encourage young men and help them see that life is a journey. Watch The Journey, hosted by me, Larry Robinson. Brought to you by the KUDZUKIAN Media Group in partnership with the Delta Boulé. Welcome back to The Journey. I'm your host, Larry Robinson, and today we have visiting with us attorney Damon Griffin. So Damon, before we left, I'll ask you, when was the first time that you realized you were a black man?
I mean, as you can imagine, and you probably experienced, there's been many instances I've been reminded that I'm a black man, right? But I'd say one of the first instances I alluded to earlier when I came to Memphis. But there was and I'll say as a young boy, honestly.
Okay.
When I realized it, in that third grade class, I was one of the only black students in the school.
Oh, really? What school was that?
It was Dogwood Elementary.
Okay.
It was Dogwood
Okay.
Elementary.
Okay.
And I remember there was a child who called me a burnt French fry.
Oh, wow.
A burnt French fry. And and I'm not acting as if in Seattle there wasn't racism and there wasn't any kind of issue, but I had never experienced that before.
Right.
And that was the first time I realized that I was different in skin tone from others in that class, and so that is the first time. But I had always been reminded of that, as I mentioned, as you can imagine, as a young black man in this society, we are constantly reminded of that.
Right, right. Tell me about that neighborhood that when you got to Memphis. What was it like? What part of town, and what do you remember about the neighborhood?
Yeah, so I've lived all over Memphis.
Okay.
Honestly, from the Midtown North Memphis area to Whitehaven at a time, and downtown,
Right.
and even as a young child out east.
Okay.
And living out there, it was like I said, it was a different experience, and realizing and looking at, me being a young black male, and being in spaces of people that may not necessarily look like me.
Right.
And the funny thing is, Larry, is that I've been in all types of diverse schools, from elementary school to high school, to Morehouse,
Right,
to UT Law School. Like different level schools were all different in diversity for me. So I walked in all kinds of spaces.
Okay. The community, your neighbors, a lot of kids. Tell me about that time you got that butt warmed up. What you do?
Yeah.
What you do?
I lived in a community where my best friend and I, my first friend in Memphis was my best friend to this day.
Oh, wow.
When we first moved to Memphis when I was 9 years old, and he today. He also went to an HBCU, Xavier, and we became best friends, and we always had each other's back, no matter what.
So what you do? What you do, man?
No, I mean, let my brothers and sisters say it. My brother and sisters tell you that I never got a whooping. But,
really?
But Larry, I come here to say today,
I
remember those whoopings. I absolutely remember them from getting into what I considered a fight at school, and my brother coming to my covering me, and then my parents finding out about it, and we getting on a punishment for it. That was the kind of household I lived in. My parents, they didn't play. And but I'm good today because of it. That's the kind of community I lived in. That was it. We had that kind of foundation in our family.
Okay. Your dad came here. Was he already a pastor, or did he get his calling once he got to Memphis?
My dad was always a minister in my life. He was always a clergyman. When he came to Memphis, he started pastoring. He got called into pastoring in 1999, and we were already in Memphis. He was serving under a different leadership, but he got called to pastor in 1999. He built a great foundation at New Beginnings Community Church. And I feel like I'm carrying that legacy of the foundation he built.
Right. Why New Beginnings?
Now,
why New Beginnings? What does that mean? What does that name of that church that you pastor, what does that mean to you? Not what it means to your dad. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, it has a huge meaning, and I think for me, absolutely, it's a new start on our spiritual walk, a new start on life, a new start. So many times we talked about earlier, we get knocked down,
right.
and we get kicked down in life, and we need a new start at times.
Mm-hmm.
And New Beginnings Community Church is that type of environment, that type of space where
right.
someone that needs a new spiritual walk or needs a new taste in their mouth.
Right.
For me, I feel like I'm bridging my dad's foundation, that tradition that he infused at New Beginnings Community Church, and I am taking the baton and with his legacy
right.
and taking it further with the reimagining church. We know church is changing, right?
Right.
And so it's a new beginning at New Beginnings Community Church because of the fact that church is reimagining itself, especially after the pandemic.
Right.
You know, young people are looking for the church to do more for them, right?
Right.
We see it, we know it,
Right.
and so New Beginnings Community Church is trying to create that space
Right.
In Memphis for not just young people, but we know
Mm-hmm.
the population, we know the needs that are out in our city,
Right.
and so we want to create that space for them.
I got it. Your teen years, you were PK. What was that like, being a preacher's kid, and what challenges did that pose as a young man?
It was tough.
Okay.
It was tough.
In what way?
So my parents weren't traditionalists,
Okay.
but at the same time, there were things that I couldn't do that some of my friends were able to do. I'll never forget, and I never let my dad live it down. You know, but I wasn't able to go to my 8th grade dance. I couldn't go to my 8th grade dance, and so you know I remember that, and that was tough.
Okay.
You know, and then my parents weren't big on us playing sports on Sundays.
Really?
They weren't big on us playing sports on Sundays, and I'm, you know, quietly, I'm gonna say it kind of quiet and low.
Uh-huh.
I let my kids do sports after church on Sundays. You know,
Okay.
but we learn from that generation,
Okay.
and we grow from that generation, and I do believe Sundays are a day of family,
Mm-hmm.
and I do believe it's a day of spiritual reflection. But I do let my kids go to sporting events if they
Right.
if they happen to have them on a Sunday.
Right. Okay. Who are the most important people in your life during that time, during your teen years?
You know, as I mentioned, my dad and I didn't agree on everything,
Right.
but he was still my number one mentor.
Really?
He was still my number one mentor, and I was blessed enough to have a father in my life, and my father played a significant role in my life, and that's why I think it's so important for me. I do have sons, and I play that role in my son's life. I'm a chaplain at Kirby High School, their football team, and I try to make sure that I'm there in a role for those young men, because
Right.
you know, not everyone has a father in
Right.
their life. There were many men at our church. I went to one of the largest black churches in Memphis at the time in the 80s and 90s, and the men at that church were tremendous.
Right.
That had major impact on me as someone that wanted to do some good things in life.
So, the men in the community, who are the most important people in your life today?
You know, I've always felt that you know, this was my dad's teaching, and I don't mind if I say that too many
Right.
times, but it's always good to have a man that is close to your age, a man that is older, and then pulling up a younger man behind you. And so I have, you know, a few of my Morehouse brothers that are here in the city. We keep each other honest.
Okay.
We keep each other accountable, because we need accountability in our lives. And so I'm proud to say that I went to Morehouse College, and I have a couple friends that are here locally
Right.
who I went to college with, that are leaders in our city that I stay in close contact with, because we keep each other accountable as men, as fathers, and as husbands.
Right.
And then I mentor young men in our church, and as I mentioned, Kirby High School. Those are the young men that I say that I'm bringing up, and then there's a couple other men that I definitely call on regularly. One of them, and I don't mind saying, is Ed Stanton.
Oh, really?
He is somebody that I have worked with for years, and someone that I've known for a long time that I can look to as a mentor, big brother type of figure.
Right.
When times might get rough in life, and we feel like we're down, and I think it's important for young men to have those three figures in their life.
Okay. You've had a lot of jobs over your career. Can you just name a few of them? Like, I mean, because you've not just in the attorney space, but even before you became an attorney.
Yeah. So I'll say this, Larry. I believe that the nexus between being a clergyman and being a lawyer is something that I feel has been beneficial for me in Memphis, and I feel like that's why I feel like I'm a strong advocate for Memphis and our community and some of the social issues and criminal justice issues we have.
Right.
I was a state prosecutor. I was a federal prosecutor, trying some of the biggest cases in our city's history. Leicester Street murder case. I was the third prosecutor on that case, and I was a young prosecutor at the time, and being pulled in, some of the senior folks seeing me and thinking that I was able to handle being on that kind of case. That was a lot. It was a lot, and I've walked through the neighborhoods all over Memphis, as in that role as a prosecutor, talking to victims' families, talking to parents, and even as my role as a federal prosecutor, and I had the opportunity to work on some big cases and really work in various communities and capacities in Memphis, and even in the private sector as I am now, being able to take all of those things that I learned, and you mentioned I had a lot of jobs even before then. Yeah, I packed groceries at Kroger. I worked at the shoe store. I worked at I had many jobs.
Well,
man.
You didn't, and you know what? I wanted to point out that it didn't start with being an attorney. That's really what I wanted to say more than anything. You got to start somewhere, and you didn't start here. But one thing that kind of pulls, that's a through line in most of your jobs, especially those later in life, has been ethics. Why ethics?
Yes, I absolutely. Everywhere I've stopped, I've had some role in integrity and ethics, and because I think it's important as men. I was taught that at a young age with my father, like I've mentioned so many times, and because that's an important trait we all must have.
Right.
We all must realize, no matter what organization you might be a part of, no matter if it's an hourly job or if it's a salary job, we must have ethics and integrity when we do our jobs. People have to be able to trust us. They have to be able to trust us with their product. They have to be able to trust us to pay us, right?
Right.
And so integrity and ethics is important. Our personal interests can't get conflicted with what we're doing if we're running our own business,
right,
or if we're running a business for somebody, or if we're working for somebody. It doesn't matter what level we're on, but integrity and ethics is an important trait that we all must have, especially as young men, young women. We all must have those traits.
Do you see that that's a learned behavior, ethics and ethics, being ethical? Can that be learned?
I think it can be learned, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We can be around people who may do negative or bad things around us,
Mm-hmm.
but there is that one thing in the back of our mind, that one that one voice in the back of our mind that we hear and know that whether that is actually good or is that actually bad, and what road am I going to take? Right. You know, I always tell young men, you know, we have opportunities. We have opportunities to take a road to the left or a road to the right. Which road are you going to take? So yes, I think it can be a trait that is learned, but I don't think we are necessarily born into being having bad behavior, right? I think we can surround ourselves around the right people to be, as you said, ethical, right?
Right. You've stated a lot how much of importance your father has played in your life, important role in your life as a mentor. What role did your mom play? My mom
played a tremendous role.
Okay.
You know, she made sure that she sacrificed. She sacrificed a whole lot. And my dad, while he was away and traveling, that kind of thing, making sure that our family was had the things that we needed. Right. My mom made sure everyone got to football practices, basketball practices, extracurricular activities, right. Made sure that we were at church. My mom used to say, no matter, I don't care what you did on Saturday, I don't care what you did at, you know, staying out all night for the prom or whatever else, you're gonna wear that tuxedo to church the next morning. Like, right. That's how my mom was. You know, you're going to church, and so my mom was basically the backbone of our household, right? Okay. And she still is to this day. She plays a tremendous role in all of our households, all of my siblings' households, and so she's even in our church. She's part of that foundation I was telling you about. Mm-hmm. She helped build that foundation at New Beginnings Community Church, and she's still there, right. Helping us build upon that foundation.
All right. Going back, you're gonna walk in the door. You're talking to that young Damon. He's sitting there eating a bowl of cereal on a Saturday morning watching cartoons. You walk in the door, he realizes you, and you realizes him. What would you say to young Damon?
Slow down, young man. Slow down. Okay. That's what I would say. I'll explain that. I used to think that, you know, I told you I wanted to be a lawyer. Mm-hmm. I used to think that I had to quickly become a lawyer. Mm-hmm. I had to quickly get some great boutique firm job. I had to quickly get that nice Porsche and not get married and just live my life, elegant life. And I would say, slow down, young man, slow down. Well, I was able to slow down. I was able to slow down, and I was able to get married and have sons and raise sons and not be at that boutique law firm, but for a short period of time, but be able to work in this community, right. And be able to take part in some of the things in this community and be a voice in this community for some of the things that may not necessarily be as equal access or equal justice right. for all. And so I say slow down because there's no rush. There's no rush to doing some of the things that we need to do to prepare ourselves in life.
All right. Last statement that I'd like you to make. I'd like you to talk to all the young men that may be listening or watching you right now. Leave them with a Griffinism or something that they can take from this conversation. It'll make it lock in their mind. And I'd like you to say it in that camera right there. Floor is yours.
You know, I'll say this. I'll tell them what I told my son when he got out the car this morning. Stick your chest out. Keep your head up. Just because you get kicked to the curb or you fall down, that doesn't mean you have to stay there. You stand up. You dust yourself off and you get up again. God created you for purpose. God created you to stand in spaces that may not be familiar to you, that may not be comfortable to you. God created you for purpose. And he didn't create you to stay on the ground and remain dirty. Stand up, young man. Stand up and be encouraged because God created you for purpose. And it's time for you to walk in that purpose, walk in those spaces. And you know what? You can call another man, and if you need encouragement, if you need inspiration, if you need that kick in the behind, there's plenty of us that are around to help you. We love you. Stay encouraged and keep that head up.
Keep your head up. That's all I'm going to say, and we're going to leave it right there. Brother Damon, thank you. Thank you for being a part of the journey.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure there's many young men and young ladies that are going to take from this moment some very powerful nuggets that's going to help enrich their journey. Listen, till the next time, The Journey on the KUDZUKIAN Network. Take care.
Thank you to our partners at Nike's Black Community Commitment. To hear more incredible stories like this, be sure to download the KUDZUKIAN app from the App Store or Google Play. Or check out the Journey Memphis podcast on all your major podcast providers. Also, check us out on the KUDZUKIAN Network.